So turning now first to Mr. Chambers. No, I have it here. There's too many papers. Mr. Chambers, you have the floor for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Hamilton, welcome back. There was a order paper question about the costs associated with some of the post-verification audits that have been done. What is the amount that's been spent to date? Is it about $1 billion? Is that a number you have handy? That was what was disclosed at the end of last year in November or December.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have the number handy in front of me, but I recall the order paper question. I expect that what's in there is correct.
Do you have an estimate of what the department will spend on post-payment verification between now and when you plan to finish that work?
I don't have that estimate in front of me, but I can get that to you. I know that we're planning to have our post-payment verifications extend out into 2025, so we would have to compute that number based on that.
Thank you. Mr. Tremblay, do you have a similar number that you could share with the committee in writing if you don't have it at your hands? Is that
at the moment, what I can tell you is that we did receive at the beginning 25 million, and we receive an additional $114 million to do post-payment verification. That's, I think, the numbers we have at the moment.
And just to clarify, did I hear you correctly? ESDC is planning to review 100% of the potential ineligible payments under the SERP? Or under the benefits provided by ESDC?
We have with Revenue Canada, and Mary can explain more, we have done data analysis on all cases because we have information of those people. We have their revenue numbers, for example. So we were able, through that, to find out and to attest if people were meeting some of the criteria.
So is that, hard to keep this all straight, but the Auditor General says there's a certain amount that should be investigated. Are you saying for the amounts that relate to ESDC that you are investigating all of the amounts that the Auditor General?
I will not call it an investigation.
Okay.
I will call it doing data
confirmation.
Yeah, okay. Confirmation, and also trying to find out in that pool of 3.7 billion for EI Herb, for example, what was the percentage or the numbers of them that had numbers that were not necessarily aligned with the criteria, which could be for good reasons, to be honest, but how many of them actually would be potentially people who receive money they should not have received.
Thank you. Just back to CRA briefly, what's the total amount of payments that have been reviewed to date? Like, how many billions have been reviewed, and you'd consider, we've looked at them, we've confirmed them, we're no longer concerned?
I'm not sure if one of my colleagues has that figure in front of them. If not, we can definitely get it to you in terms of, and we're just talking about the individual benefits here, is that?
I mean, I would prefer it for both, since it's quite a substantial number, and we did discuss this last week. But if there is a discussion about how much we've spent so far and this is how much we've reviewed, I think that's a reasonable kind of return on investment analysis that one might consider doing.
I'll turn it to Marc Lemieux, my colleague.
So, like it was explained earlier, the agency does business intelligence exercise on all of the cases. And that's how we go by our risk-based approach. So every Canadian that receives an amount through SERB, we assess against the risk factor that we have. So like we've explained for the SUS early last week, it's the same approach where we look at all of the payments and we assess the risk for all of them. And then we choose which one we will audit.
So here's a different question then. What amounts are you not going to look at on your risk-based approach? How much? Based on your risk-based approach, you're deciding what you're going to look at, correct? So what are you not going to look at?
Mr. Chair, I can start that one, and Marc may not. And I think, as we have said last week and say again now, the compliance efforts are still at early stages. right? So we're going to be continuing these out to 2025. So it's very difficult to know what will be left at the end of the day, because our risk-based approach does get adjusted as we move along. We might see things in a particular audit that we do that points to a risk that maybe we hadn't seen, and so we would adjust our algorithms and our approach going forward. But the point is that at the end of the day, there will probably be some that don't get looked at just because they wouldn't be cost effective for us to go after. But it's very hard to say what that will look like now.
Right, so there's some kind of return of investment discussion happening. Just trying to understand, what's the level of risk that we're taking, or what's the level of non-recoupment of potential ineligible recipients that we're trying to get. So any kind of information that you can provide about how much you've looked at so far, how much you've recovered, what's that look like, and what you're planning to do until, I guess it sounds like 2025 now. That would be very helpful for the committee.
Sure, we can come back to you there with more information on that. We do have figures at our disposal about how much has actually been repaid now, how much we've looked at. I think I mentioned last week in the context of the wage subsidy, we've done over, again, it's a graduated approach. We look at everything at the beginning just to see what's there. Then we do audits. We did a pilot phase. We have now done over 4,000 audits. We've got over $15 billion we're looking at the moment, and that will continue for the next few years as